exerciseth all the power of the first beast before him, and causeth the earth and them that which dwell therein to worship the beast, the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. And he doeth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men, and deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth, that they should make an image of the beast, which had the wound by a sword, and did live. And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak, and cause that as many as would worship the image of the beast, and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads.
And the last two verses.
And that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666.
All right, so a lot of things that we've seen in the media, just a lot of things we're familiar with. But before we go into the much talked about, something that's not always, at least not in the media, is in this manner, is the fire coming down from heaven. We see that, there's miracles, there's signs, and there's wonders that are performed by the beast, by this false prophet, if you will, by this land beast, more specifically. It's the land beast. And as we've been talking about, as we've been making a case in our previous studies and previous videos, what will be the actions seen here in this country, the United States of America. So what I wanted to touch on is this fire coming down from heaven. Its purpose is, among the other signs, what is the purpose of the fire coming down from heaven for this land beast? What does it try to accomplish with it? Or what does the Bible say it accomplishes with it? Yeah. People believing. Okay, yeah, possibly. And you said deceiving as well? Deception. All right, yeah, fair. So making people believe one thing. Now, I'm sure that in the minds of those, of whatever's originating this, right? I'm sure that they think something else. Just like in the times of the sea beast, the first beast, I'm sure that some, I cannot say all, but I'm sure there's a large number of people that while they were doing the wrong thing, thought they were doing the right thing. So that will very likely be true as well. There's a lot of people in this situation that they're going to be believing, really believing to be doing the right thing when they're going to be doing the wrong thing. But remember, that's some people. Some people know what they're doing, and because of the love of power or something else, they're going to hold on. Even if they know it's deception and so forth. It's just the way that some people, all of us have the temptation to be that way. So fire from heaven, it's interesting that that is the miracle that is chosen, right? Yes?
I don't recall, I don't know if anyone else, is there anyone else has ever caused fire to come down from heaven?
Yeah, there is.
No.
Yes. Well, let's go there. So and you guys can turn in your Bibles. We don't have to read the whole thing because it's 19 verses really that we're going to talk about. But you guys know the answer to that question, right? 1 Kings chapter 18, verses 20 through 39. Welcome. We can go ahead and at least take a look at that. Let's skim around. And I want to, just tell me what's happening in those texts. Again, it's 19 verses, so I understand. Oh, you guys are taking a look. It's right there. 1 Kings chapter 18, verses 20 through 39. But as you're looking at it, as we're glancing, feel free to just, talk to me. Who are the characters? What is the setting? Where are they? What's happening? Things like that. Who, what, where, when, whys, those questions. What can you guys tell me? Okay. Elijah. So the who, all right, so we're getting the who. Is Elijah alone?
Ahab, and this is with the prophets. When he
The false prophets, right. 400, 450, the prophets of Baal. Okay, yeah, that's important. The setting, the place, the where. Mount Carmel.
Basically, Elijah's calling them to basically take a stand.
right.
Okay, so that's going to be coming soon. Take a stand.
No more wavering.
Take a stand for what?
Either you're for God or
Yes.
Okay, all right, very good. Does everybody see that?
They were 450 prophets.
450. That's outnumbering Elijah by quite a bit, right? By quite a few. And so there's a call afterwards. Now, for those coming in, we're in the book of 1 Kings, chapter 18, verses 20 through 39. We're not necessarily reading, but as we're just throwing out the highlights. We're answering who, what, where, why, and when as we're looking into the story from our Bibles. So something else I want to say. Where is the verse where there is talk about fire? Not it coming down. Which verses are talking about it coming down? 38. Is the fire coming down at that point, or is there talk of it? The fire fell there? Okay, so before the fire falls, where is there talk of the fire?
Verse 23.
Verse 23, what does that one say?
And you say, but no fire under the wood.
Okay, put fire under the wood. Thank you. So
No fire.
put no fire under the wood. All right. Now, what is the purpose? Why are they doing that? Why are those stipulations, those conditions?
Because
24, we're setting up 24.
He's setting up 24. All right. What's happening in verse 24?
Then you will call the name of your gods, and I will call the name of the Lord. And the God who answers by fire.
Okay. So is everybody following? Yes. Verse 24. Now that is very, very important. That is the stipulations there because, there's conditions placed on verse 23 and on verse 24.
Basically saying,
The-
whoever can make the fire come down, that is who God is.
Whoever can make, yes, all right. Whoever can make the fire come down, he is God. He is real. If he's unable to call fire down, he isn't. So it would be an evidence, it would be a sign of that there is a true God working on the behalf of his people if fire can come down from heaven. It was later, as mentioned by somebody on this side, later it was part of the evidence given to people so that they could make a decision, right? So fast forward, Revelation 13, fire is going to come down from heaven, and these things are in the minds of some people. Fire coming down from heaven would have to be like the first time. It would have to be evidence for that God is at work. It's a sign to deceive people because of what it did the first time. And I wish I could say that's the only little trick up the sleeve of the beast that is an imitation that is going to have high effectiveness. But do you guys see how this fire coming down from heaven this fire coming down from heaven is very instrumental and will carry a lot of weight. Because when it is seen, it will be highly persuasive to those witnessing it that this is a sign of that God is at work. Just like it was a true God at work at that. If the mark of the beast is going to be enforced, there's got to be something to get behind. People aren't going to mindlessly the mark of the beast, sign me up. Sounds like everything I hoped for and more, right? No one's going to think like that.
So
Comment.
Whoever is speaking these words at that time is the
Okay.
false.
Yeah.
Their credibility is going to be on that fire coming down from heaven. As soon as that happens, then they're going to believe in whatever that individual are saying because they're going to think that's coming from God himself, even if it contradicts what God's word says.
Yeah.
That's going to be the real test.
Yes, the real test. Any comments on what was just said here or thoughts, concerns? Thanks for sharing. It's certainly very valid. So we can begin to see how this fire coming down from heaven is just reminiscent of another time and what it represented the last time. And so it'll carry a lot of weight and it'll serve as a function. Remember, we've talked about week, I don't even want to count anymore. I know what week it is of chapter 13, but it's been many. But we've covered a lot of chapter 13 and a lot of, 12, 11, and from 1 on. We've seen that there's a lot of counterfeits that the dragon is doing. a lot of counterfeits. And so this fire coming down from heaven will, as mentioned, it'll carry a lot of weight behind it. And it'll give perhaps something for people to get behind. A cause, if you will. A cause to get behind.
God is a consuming fire, so if
That
it's
too.
done from heaven, must be God.
It must be.
That's what the reasoning will be.
And yes, certainly yes. Yes. By many.
It's not in the fire, but some of the occurrences happened when Moses went to meet Pharaoh.
Okay.
Turned the staff into serpent, and
Yes.
the enemy was able to do the same thing.
And he sent fire, a chariot of fire for Elijah.
He did.
I mean, so
Yeah.
fire, we know that's synonymous with when God
Took Elijah, yeah, that way. Who, later in this very same, well, not in this same story, but a character from the story, the key character. How about this? Although it's not in the slide behind me, but how about this? God would lead his people right through a wilderness. By day he was
a cloud of
a cloud,
pillar,
a pillar of cloud, and by night he was
fire.
a pillar of fire coming. It's a vertical thing, right? And that would be God's leading. His protection is just not his presence, right? So you can see when you think of these things, and you imagine this, it's just that's what it's represented in just about all the circumstances we can think of in the Old Testament. So it'll lead to more and more. It'll lead to its effectiveness, its successful rate.
I think of the times that we're living right now.
Yes.
People like to be entertained.
Okay.
You watch movies when you see these superpower things. So
Yes.
you see somebody doing that, immediately you're gonna think,
Ooh.
oh man, this is a superpower. This is somebody with power.
Yeah, imagine how excited some people are going to be.
They're gonna be excited because
Yeah.
that's what people like to be entertained.
Yeah. So it'll appeal to those, right? Yeah, I didn't think of it that way, but yeah, it will be very appealing to those who love the effects and love that kind of stuff. Like, wow, yeah, there will be some people with that kind of excitement. And it'll appeal to the people who, the theologians and all that, right? Because, wow, yeah, so it'll have something for the whole world, for all the world.
Kind of funny, during
Come.
the time of Jesus, the Jews were looking for a sign.
They were, weren't they?
Who he was.
Yeah, but he would not give them one except the sign of Jonah.
At the end, where people will see this and they'll believe it because they've seen the sign. That
Yeah,
whoever so-called caused the sign,
yeah.
that's the sign we're then looking for to prove that this person is who they claim to be. But it's going to be a false sign.
Yeah, and you caused me to remember something. I don't know who was preaching this, but have you guys ever wondered or maybe heard someone ask you, why aren't we seeing Old Testament level miracles and signs anymore? Why don't we see that kind of stuff in our day? Or even some New Testament stuff, right? But think of Israel when they were leaving Egypt. I mean, man, because if I saw that kind of stuff, I would be on the narrow path and nothing could get me out to the Sierra Way, right? If I could see that level of stuff. But I can't remember who was saying this, so I don't claim credit for this. But, they pointed out a sequence in that history that was logical. So, this is Israel was prisoners. They were in bondage and exposed to all sorts of idolatry in Egypt for 400 plus years, right? 430, I think it was. And so in that time, I mean, there's generations of exposure to false religions. They may not exactly have the same access to the word, etc. So as they're coming out of Egypt, led by Moses, the miracles were big, they were grand, they were strong. But who were they? They were a people who had largely not experienced and forgotten and not had access like it was before. And, their forefathers, like Abraham, who spoke with God. So what happened? The waters would part, fire would come down, clouds would be leading, etc. But as the time would pass and they had access little by little to more and more scriptures, right? The first 5 and then a little bit more, the Psalms would come along, other prophets would come along. Miracles would continue, but the frequency and the grandness would not be as frequent. Does that make sense? The magnitude would not be. Why? Because the word of God was spreading. And so these days where we are, I mean, again, when I knock on doors and sometimes I haven't asked this question in quite a long time, but I had sometimes before. And, if there's a Bible in the home, because some people respond, I'm already a Christian, and I don't want it to be the end of the conversation. But hey, what church you go to, you must have a Bible. What's your favorite translation or text or story to keep the conversation going? And, an answer I've gotten frequently is, I got 5, 6, 7 Bibles at home. then they'll confess they don't read it. But but they have a lot of Bibles, and that is just to say that we have, why we may not see these kind of miracles much right now and for a while is because of the level of access that we have to the Word. God reveals Himself through His Word, and a sign, well, as you guys have shared, a sign can be performed by more than one person. Any other thoughts before I want to go to the second bullet point here, because it's fascinating too, but any other thoughts on that? The fire coming down from heaven is significant, is very on purpose, it's strategic. But there is something else in the second point here, and this would involve, well, fire as well. Not this way. It wasn't coming down from any skies. But you guys recall in Daniel chapter 3, there are three characters there who are, the good guys. In the story, for the most part, seem that way. Who are they? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, right? What is the condition? What is their story? I have verses 1 through 6 here, but, what is the story? What are they up against? Yes, those are the Hebrew names. Yes. They're forced to worship. All right, what was this statue, by the way? Yeah, of a from a dream, remade into gold. There was an image. I'll say that a little bit more, but now that it was mentioned, we'll say it. What is the beast? What is the second beast doing with the first beast? Making a what? Yeah, making an image for worship. And as we've saw, we'll come back to this later on here, but verse 17, if we're still in chapter 13, it says, and that no one will be able to buy or sell. Okay, that's the limitations there. But that's not the verse I wanted.
On this 15, it says,
Yeah, 15. Go ahead, you can read it.
and cause as many that as will not worship the image of the beast to be killed.
Be killed. So there is the same thing. We have a parallel again, about worshiping an image. And there's a death decree. So history is going to be repeating. There will be differences, but there will be similarities. So that's an interesting parallel too. There happens to be fire, but the fire is different. The fire in Daniel chapter 3 is not the same one. Is not coming down, of course. But what I can say is that God's people are going to perceive to be alone, right? Because God is on the other side, doing the whatever you want to call it, persecuting. That may be the appearance. But there was a fourth that appeared there, wasn't there? It might have seemed for a while that they were alone. And that can be a friendly reminder, because I wonder if anybody will wonder during those days, like, wow, they're claiming to be on the side of God. This is a religious thing going on. You might feel alone, right? Like, is God really on my side? But He showed up in that other fire, didn't He? He won't show up in the fire coming down from heaven, though. That's in Revelation 13. That part is a sign from the land beast. But when times get tough, it's important to remember, even if He is unseen, that He is with us. Any other thoughts about that part? Because there's something else that's fascinating too, but I'll wait just a moment. So look at, was it verse 15? Yeah, so we read verse 15 and we emphasized the killing part, right? The death decree. But what does the first part say?
Are you in Daniel?
No, sorry, Revelation 13, verse 15. Yes, Revelation 13, 15. We read about how those who don't worship the image of the beast, there will be a command to kill. But what is the first words of
He had power to give life unto the image of the beast.
life? You know what other translations will say, or the Greek? To give breath to the image, so that it could, have it provide, come to life. Does that remind you of any other story where that happened? The creation story. You guys recall Genesis chapter 2, I believe it was, where God breathed into I don't want to say an image, but, into a dust form of a man, and brought it to life. This beast is pretty bold, isn't it? Trying to repeat the miracles and then doing something that God did once upon a time. And so you wonder how people are going to be deceived. Well, it's imitating God. It's doing the things that God does. It has this appearance of godliness. I wonder if it denies you know how the rest of the verse goes, the power thereof. But it's doing things that God does. That's another interesting parallel that is breathing image in. Breathing image, breathing into the image to give it life. And these are the things that God does. Any other thoughts before we get into the parts that? Yes.
Yes, I was saying that all the time. I'm thinking that you're not looking at the fear factor that's there. Fear from seeing fire come down from heaven. Fear of seeing the image come to life. Um, in my perspective, I can see that a lot of those people will be afraid. So a lot of them
Could
will
be.
do things out of fear.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Especially when that verse 15 part too. Like, oh wait, what? You mean if I don't do this, I'm gonna be killed? Yes, there is a fear factor.
Or not be able to ride.
Yeah.
I think what will be the only thing that will take away the fear from us?
Well,
We're gonna be afraid of what this beast will do to us.
yeah.
Something should hold us. So we not. I mean, we don't care about what the beast does.
And that's a great comment, but we'll come to that. Maybe someone will get it. 1, 2. I don't know who was first. All right, we'll go.
Like I believe that, like you said, fear. A lot of people will probably be deceived because they are fearful, and well, God says perfect love casts all fear.
Huh.
And I was always keeping the forefront of my mind that when God does anything, He gives us a choice. He doesn't force us. That's number one. And number two, it is done in a loving way.
Yeah.
And if we remember, and a third thing point that I want to share is that the Word of God is the only weapon that we can use to identify these things when they are not right.
Amen.
So if we don't have the Word, we won't be able to identify it. And there's going to come a time when we won't have the literal Word, only that which we keep in our hearts and our minds. And that is what we will have to dwell upon.
Yeah.
And the other point is that when you dwell on the Word, it's impossible to read this Word and not be connected. When you're connected to God, He will direct you. He will show you the things that are not right and the things that are His and the path that He wants you to follow. Because He said, Thy Word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Great comments, Alfina. I don't know if you're going to say different or did she? She got it all? That was good. Actually, that was good. Thanks for sharing. Does that help as well? I know that you weren't much in the question. You weren't in the question, but like the comments, I think, have a good connection too. And I was going to ask too, with that, some will be in fear. Perfect love casts out fear. But as mentioned with the example earlier, too, another one with the fire coming down, some will just simply be excited. Some might be like, oh yeah, there's power there. I want that. Some might not do it for fear. Some might want to do it for ambition. Maybe I can rise to power with this or something. There's promise there. Maybe for some. But also then I remember Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve. Eve was deceived, blindsided in a way, right? But not so with Adam. He knew. And despite that knowledge he possessed, he still fell. And I wonder if during this time, if it'll be the same thing. Some will be blindsided, maybe because they're not keeping, or they're rejecting the opportunity to receive the word when it is brought to them, right? Because, the everlasting gospel is going to go out to every nation, kindred, tongue, and people. But some will accept it and some will not. Yes.
Yes, I think that is because she just gave the answer perfect love.
Yeah,
How
yeah.
will you